I went on a drive, just me and my father, through like the cottage country roads. We blasted some music, and that experience was amazing, you know? And I remember having my hand on the console, and he grabbed my hand. I felt this energy charge through my body. And it was sad because that was the last summer I had my father.
Greg, who was Michael O'Gallagher?
He was my father. He had a pretty massive impact on my life. He came from a pretty humble background, dropped out of university, and he was just very driven to be successful. He was incredibly goal driven. He started pretty much from scratch and built, at the time, the biggest privately owned real estate company in Canada. When you're young, you just have this larger than life kind of image. Even though after he passed away, that was still there, this desire to make him very proud. I remember I was in summer camp. So the summer before he passed away, I really did not want to go to this. I kind of wanted to be with my family at the cottage and my cousins, but I ended up going to this month-long summer camp. Halfway through the summer camp, your family can come visit you. And my father, he just bought 911 Turbo Silver. My mom and like some aunts, uncles took some other cars, and then I went on a drive, just me and my father, through like the cottage country roads. We blasted some music, and I remember having my hand on the console, and he grabbed my hand. I felt this energy charge through my body. And I felt that because he was a huge influence on me. Everything he said he was going to do, he did. And the time I spent with him was so meaningful. And so those moments I had with him were so powerful.
Greg O'Gallagher, welcome to the Roller Coaster Podcast.
Thank you, man. I'm pumped to be here.
Thanks. Appreciate you being here. For those who are listening, not watching, I'm sitting in front of a man who's one of the best looking men that I've ever seen in my life. He's 6 foot or so, probably, if I had to guess, in the 180 range. Jacked. He's wearing a sweater, but you can still see his shoulders, which means he's in really good shape. And it's a pleasure to have you on, man.
Thank you, man.
Thank you for being here. Greg, who was Michael O'Gallagher?
Yeah, he was my father. And he had a pretty massive impact on my life.
Tell me more.
Yeah, he passed away when I was very, very young, but he accomplished some very, very incredible things. He was very, very, he came from a pretty humble background, dropped out of university, and he was just very driven to be successful. You read these self-help books, and that was just all the stuff that self-help books teach you, which is natural to him. He just had he was incredibly goal driven. And so that's kind of something I learned. Even when I was a kid, he would tell me, set goals, always set goals, work hard. And so he started pretty much from scratch and built, at the time, the biggest privately owned real estate company in Canada. And he achieved incredible success. And I got to kind of get that sort of mindset. Obviously, when you're like a kid, 10, 11, it's hard to really learn that much. But I kind of absorbed sort of the mindset and the mentality that he had, and the way at which he kind of approached life and approached business. And so he was really a really powerful force on me. And then, it's interesting when you lose someone really at a young age, like there's an arc you see people go through, like as you're a teenager, as you're an adult, like your perception, right, of your father kind of changes over time. Like I would see kind of friends, and it was a very, very different, their dynamic they had with the father. When you're young, you just have this larger than life kind of image. And so I saw him accomplish amazing things, and I was very, very, I've always wanted to make him proud, whether I was like 10, 11, playing sports, doing push-ups. And then that kind of, even though after he passed away, that was still there, this desire to make him very proud.
How did he pass?
Cancer.
And was it obvious? Did they give you a timeline? Did you know it was coming? Was it a surprise?
It was leukemia. If you go back 20 years ago, the survival rate was way worse than it is now today. But as a kid, it just was fathomable that that he wasn't going to beat it. It was just like I was very, very, I didn't once cross my mind, right? And then yeah, it just it was an absolute like complete like it was an absolute shock. But again, the deck was sort of stacked against him at that time with leukemia, and he was a bit of he was, you know, his he wanted to live his life. He wanted to go and, you know, see his kids' hockey games, and he was a bit too much of a risk taker when like the time was to rest and recuperate.
So he passed the torch on to you, per se. You said that you think you've made him proud. What is it about what you've done that makes you feel like you've made him proud?
Well, for me, there was like sort of a fork in the road, you know. My father did real estate. That was what he was in, just that was his highest value. He loved buying buildings, doing deals. And for me, without him there, you know, I was kind of on my own. And so I had to ask myself the question, like, my father, his highest value was real estate. That's what he was passionate about. He liked doing buildings. What's my highest value? What am I passionate about? I'm not going to be the best at real estate. I'm not going to be able to live up to that. But what I do care about, what I do love, what I will spend all day reading and learning about and pushing my body on is health and fitness. It's the body. And I did see, you know, how precious life can become if you're not careful, you know? So I was very, very driven to achieve incredible shape, be lean, strong, fit, healthy. And that was sort of where that's sort of what I wanted to tackle. And I believe that if he saw me really go after something that I was very, very driven about and actually make an impact on people's lives and have, you know, like anywhere I go, if I go into the gym, there's people that come up to me, oh my God, I lost 20 pounds in your program, or I did your Greek God, I got bigger. And so that sort of impact that kind of has rippled across, you know, anywhere I go, I think he would be very, very proud of. And so I think that's sort of the main thing. I didn't want to go in the real estate direction. I wanted to go where I feel like I could be the best at something.
Yeah, you said that when he passed away, I realized he wasn't going to be there to show me the ropes. I put a lot of pressure on myself to figure out how to make something of my own life. So I read more books, I set more goals, I wanted to make him proud, and I wanted to work twice as hard. You also said that it took you a long time for his death to really sink in. I think it was, you know, several years later that you said this. What do you think it was that made it take so long really for his passing to set in for you?
Well, like it's kind of hard to explain unless you've really been through it, right? And like it's such a different thing losing someone when you're a kid versus you're 25 and you lose a parent. That's very hard. But as a kid, it's just a completely different thing. But it's just, you know, the first couple months, it doesn't seem real, right? It doesn't see, you kind of like, you feel like you're in this kind of, this bad dream. Like it doesn't seem real. And then over time, it slowly starts to sink in. But the point you want to get to, if anyone's sort of been through this, the point you want to get to is you want to get to the point where you appreciate the time you had with that person so much. And it's not this, I wish it wasn't this isn't fair, this shouldn't have happened. That is not good at all. And so I had to get to the point where I was like, I really appreciate the time I have with my father, the impact he had on me, and I want to make the most of my life. If you hang on to onto what should have been, or this isn't fair, I wish he was still here, that's just a loop of negativity, right? If that person passed away, they don't want you to be in that negative state. They want you to just have fond memories of the time, treasure that, learn from it, and move forward. And so when I got to that point, which was many, many years later, it's an amazing place to get to,
Do you feel like you still have a connection with him today?
I do. I definitely do. Once every maybe a couple times a year, I'll have like a kind of reflection. But I definitely feel a connection. But now it's been 22 years, so it's been a very, very long time. When I see my uncle, I don't see him very often, but my uncle has like when I saw old home videos of my father, like my uncle and him, I kind of have like, it was weird, they have like the exact same voice. So if I see my uncle, sometimes it will bring it back. But I do a little bit, like a couple times a year, I will do some reflection and stuff, and I do feel a connection.
You ever experimented with like plant medicine or breath work ever?
I've experimented with I actually had a pretty interesting experience with psilocybin, and I definitely had a moment, right, where I was doing some sort of, it actually might have been a breathing meditation. It was some sort of pineal breathing meditation, reverse breathing thing, and I was on not a lot of mushrooms, like not enough to trip out, but like a decent dose, maybe a gram max. And I felt like I had a sort of a experience or whatever, and I just felt like these two words, like I'm here. And so I did have like an experience with that.
How did that actually feel, like in your body?
Felt great. I mean, it was almost kind of something I kind of thought. It was almost kind of it was kind of proof that, yeah, it was crazy. I was like, but I didn't, like, it felt so real,
Yeah, I think so. I've had my fair share of, I would call them, out of body experiences, particularly in breath work, some plant medicine, particularly breath work. And I think the number one way to be connected to the other side is through that modality. I think it's really powerful. And, I've had really sort of vivid experiences with relatives who have passed on, and even with God, for example. Like the closest I've ever felt to God was in these sort of experiences. So yeah, I was curious if you had tapped into that as a modality to get closer to your father.
Yeah, no, I did the experience once. I haven't fully, I've only flirted with some of the spiritual stuff and psychedelics, but I haven't fully like gone into like deep into that. It's intense.
Yeah. I'd love to at some point introduce you to my breathwork coach.
Great.
And even set up a time where we could go do it together, because I think it would be super meaningful for you. So powerful.
What style of breath work is
it? It's called holotropic breath work. And so it's an intense hour-long breath pattern. Work is in the title of breath work for a reason in this. It's hard work, but it simulates a DMT experience, because there's a release of DMT naturally through your breath when you do this. And I've done about 12 to 15 of these in the last year and a half. and it's completely changed my life.
Wow.
So I love sharing it with other people. Many people in this room right now have done it with me for their first time and would say the same thing. So I'd love to do that for you. I think it'd be awesome.
Great.
So recently there was 3 men in our community in my neighborhood that died in a plane accident actually this week.
Plane accident?
A plane accident. Oh, yeah. So it was a private plane, and essentially malfunction on the runway before they were taking off. 180 miles an hour. Brakes went out. They couldn't take off, and they hit a car, and there was all 3 of them died. One of their sons died, and then one of their sons lived to tell the story of sort of what happened. This was this week.
Oh my God.
But all 3 of these men left boys at home, young boys, mostly in their teens. What advice do you have for young boys who have lost their dad?
It's hard to really give advice on this. It's the hardest thing to go through. I can't, like, the only way I can explain it is like your world is crumbling around you. It is brutal to go through. I mean, it's very, very helpful if you have other family members that you can get close to, but it is definitely one of the hardest things you'll ever experience. And it almost just makes everything else feel like not that big of a deal as you go through life, you know? Yeah. You see your friend fucking hurting because of a breakup. You're like, it's not that, it's nothing compared to, you know, at that time losing someone. But I remember like the first, you know, week, you're just kind of breaking down every day, and then you're breaking down every 3 days. And then you start to kind of, the rhythm kind of changes where you go on with your life, and then you'll think about it once a month. And then, you know, I would have like a therapeutic kind of thing I would do where I had this, when I was growing up, I had this room in our house as the library, and we had, you know, my father had, we had his ashes in there, and it was just a very, very special room to my father. He built it. Like, it was part of it when he designed the home. Like, this was his favorite room in the house. He had all his books. He was big into reading, and he had his office in there. And I just have like this nice kind of moment where I think about him and almost kind of like, in a way, kind of keep him up to what I was doing. And it's incredibly hard. Over time, it does get a lot better, but just focus on appreciating the time that you had with him. And as a teenager, like, I remember, like, it was kind of crazy, but I remember, like, you know, I grew up in this huge house, and, you know, I knew my father was incredibly successful, but I didn't know, you know, are we set for life? What's going on? He's not here. Like, he passed away when he was 45. Like, it's, and I just remember, well, shit, I got to start. I was 13. I was 11 years old, 12, 13 as this was going on. I was like, I got to start learning how to make money. Right. So I started buying books on business, and I started reading up on that. And I was not into drinking. I was not into, drugs. I was into working out, and I liked to work out, and I just kind of pursued my passion. But it's like, it's hard. Like, it's, yeah, the most important thing is take time to process it and allow yourself to feel those emotions and get closer to those around you, and really, really just, the other thing I think that was really, you know, comforting to me was, like, you know, my father, his mother passed away when he was 13. He had a father in his life, but as far as I could tell, I never saw them extremely close. And the most important thing to him really was obviously was his family, the family he created, his wife, his 5 kids, you know, even his brothers and stuff. And so I kind of realized, like, the most important thing that I do one day is going to be building my own family. And, your father is there to guide you. But at the end of the day, the most important thing I do is build my own family.
Yeah.
And it was weird to have that thought at like 11, 12, 13. But I just looked at his life and I didn't, his parents weren't this massive part of his life. It was the family he created. That was where his focus was. And well, I mean, his focus, like he was working like insane hours and he was very dedicated on the business. And the plan was to one day, conquer this business. And I mean, he was on the way to becoming a billionaire if he had more time. But he was eventually going to find that balance. Let's go all in on this business, build this real estate company, and then kind of find that balance with the family. And you don't get that time. You don't always get that time. And so it kind of made me realize I want to sort of build my life concurrently.
Yeah.
I want to be in great shape, work on my business, and then also like have that time I want for my loved ones or social life. I want to build it concurrently because you might not get the time you want. And so I like in my fitness and in my, business, I sort of have this sort of against the grain, sort of have your cake, eat it too kind of style, where it's like, how can I achieve my goals, but also do so in a fulfilling, balanced way? So, I mean, on one end of the spectrum, when I was, one of the first books I read when I was 18 was called The 4-Hour Workweek, Tim Ferriss. And it was a very, very cool idea. The title's a bit more of like hyperbole, like, actually, but it was kind of a cool concept, right? About, delegating, you can build, if you build stuff online, you just have all like way more freedom. And so I always wanted to kind of build an amazing life concurrently and have that balance and figure out how to kind of partition things to make that happen. And yeah.
I think that's really well said. And I think that, most men out there who have kids and families are not doing that.
Right. And the sort of the against the grain kind of thing I could say that I thought about is that it's interesting, right? Because my father worked so much and was pretty much, I would see him when I was a young kid, I would see him for 10, 15 minutes when he came home at night after the office. He'd leave before I woke up, be back at 8 o'clock. I'd see him for 15 minutes. Maybe we do like some funny stories and stuff.
Yeah.
And then once on the weekend, right? Maybe a Saturday, I'd be able to spend some time with him. And then maybe a family trip a couple times a year. So like really most of my life was like, it was very finite time I spent with my father growing up, but it's you appreciate it so much because that time is limited. I remember I was in summer camp. So the summer before he passed away, I really did not want to go to this month-long summer camp. I mean, I kind of wanted to be with my family at the cottage and my cousins, but I ended up going to this month-long summer camp, and it was sad because that was the last summer I had my father. But there was a moment where, halfway through the summer camp, like your family can come visit you. And my father, he just bought this 911 Turbo Silver. He came to the camp, and my mom and like some aunts, uncles took some other cars. And then I went on a drive, just me and my father, through like the Canadian sort of Muskoka kind of cottage country roads. We blasted some music, and that experience was amazing, And I remember having my hand on the console, and he grabbed my hand. I felt this energy charge through my body. And I felt that because he was a huge influence on me. Everything he said he was going to do, he did. He just had such a strong mentality. And the time I spent with him was so meaningful. This is the thing that people don't always realize, it's that, you know, if you're going to make your business a priority and you're going to go after what you want, then you're not going to be you're not going to be around your family all the freaking time. But it's like everything has a benefit and a cost. If you are around your kids all the freaking time,
your business isn't going to be as big.
No, it's not going to be as big. And then they're not going to be as excited to see you because you're always there.
Yeah.
It's like scarcity, in a way, scarcity is linked to value.
Yeah.
And so those moments I had with him were so powerful.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's well said, man. I want to hit you with rapid fire fitness questions.
Sure.
Okay. So we're going to pivot a little bit here. By the way, I think the best content that you've ever produced is when you're whooping that Bob dude's ass. Like, that's the best shit ever.
Yeah, I gotta do more of that.
You
yeah,
need to.
That's
you need
been
to bring that back.
Nothing I've done has gotten more attention than that.
It's so funny,
Yeah.
dude. It's so funny. And you actually looks like you know what you're doing. It looks like
Thank
you're
you.
really putting the work on it.
Yeah.
So I need to see like a roundhouse kick. You've seen Sean O'Malley do the same thing with Bob, and he'll do like,
he's an Arizona guy. Okay,
Yeah.
cool.
Yeah.
Cool.
Okay,
Yeah.
so we'll kind of rapid fire these.
Yeah.
Let's start with this one. How has fitness allowed you to battle trauma and depression in your life?
I couldn't imagine going through life and not working out. It's just so much. It's so easy to fall into a negative place. When you work out, the brain chemistry is firing correctly. You feel confident. You feel amazing. I can't imagine. And I don't work out like 2 hours a day. I do 3 heavy lifts a week. I do lots of steps, but I couldn't maintain like an awesome optimal mental state without training. I can't fathom it.
Yeah.
So it's non-negotiable.
Yeah. And days that you miss, you know it.
I mean, I don't really miss days.
Yeah.
If I'm so super busy one day, I'll just go the next day. But it's like, I don't like, fitness is a part of my life, and I fast every single day. So that keeps me sharp. I get my steps in, I get outside, I get the natural light. Now I've actually been doing a little bit more, I'm 33 now. I got ripped and did everything without cardio. I just steps, lifting, fasting, XYZ. But now, just for the mental benefits, I will do 45 minutes a couple times a week, zone 2, like nice, big incline walk. And it's great for the mental clarity, for sure.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Top 3 ways to naturally increase testosterone.
So 1, you want to dial in your sleep setup, right? You want to have blackout, cold. You want to get really amazing sleep. When your sleep's off, T levels drop, and also you're so much more prone to getting sick. The second one is you need to have your nutrition dialed. So I recommend doing, balance, steaks, fruits, potatoes. You want to eat very balanced. Whenever you restrict carbs or restrict fats, you can drop your T. So a lot of people do low carb. It's not beneficial for maximizing testosterone. Third, it's kind of like sun. Vitamin D is a driver of testosterone. Very, very helpful. But those are 3 big ones. When you combine that with lifting, very effective.
Yeah. What's more important in getting shredded? What you eat or time in the gym?
It's not even close. It's not even close. It's what you eat by a large margin.
Like 90% of getting shredded is that?
It can definitely be 90%. If you just lift weights twice a week and you just walk a little bit and but your diet style, you'll get ripped. But if you could spend 3-4 hours a day in the gym, but if you eat too much, you're not going to get ripped. So it's like the nutrition, you can get ripped with very little exercise if your diet is dialed, and you can work out all the time and gain weight. So it's just the diet is is that important.
Yeah.
You
talked about fasting. So as it pertains to your diet, how many times are you eating a day?
3 times a day. So I'll fast till the early afternoon. I'll have a moderate sized meal first. And then I'll do a big dinner feast. And then I finish off with some dessert at night.
Yeah. So there's a lot of men that are in shape, but they don't have what I would consider a nice aesthetic. I'd even put myself in that, like in good shape, but don't think I have a great aesthetic. You've clearly unlocked the look, the aesthetic, right? Like the shoulders and the wide back and the V and the whole deal. What do you think is the key to having a nice aesthetic?
Yeah, it's a pretty simple formula. So the biggest thing is like being lean corrects a lot. If you get someone to 8 to 10% body fat, bad proportion almost goes away. So what I mean by that is that when you lose fat, your shoulders naturally just get a lot more separation. You create more of that V cut. Your chest, if you have a little bit of body fat, it can kind of store in the chest and make it a bit droopy. It just becomes more plate of armor. So you want your waist to be 45% of your height. So someone that's 6 foot, it's about 32.5 inches. So you want a taut waist. Okay. That's not what pants you wear. That's measuring right around the belly button. But then it's like, you want to focus a little bit more on doing incline presses that hit the upper chest, a little bit less flat. When I first started lifting, I did so much benching and I get this droopier chest.
Cups,
and you want to be doing like, I do twice as many sets on shoulders than any other muscle group. So my shoulders are a huge priority. But so I put a bit more emphasis on the upper chest and then a lot more on the shoulders, and you get a much better physique. Contrarily, right? If you do a lot of flat work and you don't focus as much on the upper chest and shoulders, it almost creates more of a narrower, boobier look. So it's a feminine look, right? So you want to almost have more size here, here, here. And if you think about when someone's looking at you, right? If you're talking to someone, you're catching them up here. So all the size you're creating on the shoulders, traps, upper chest is what people notice.
Yeah, that's well said.
Yeah.
And then how do you keep that consistent for long periods of time? Like, I think you said something like it's been 10 years of the same look and same kind of physique, right? Like, how do you do that for so long?
Yeah. So, I mean, look, I'm not in the gym 2 hours a day. So I don't ever burn out. I get excited to work out. I lift weights 3 days a week and I love it. I love it. Like once you kind of get into the groove, you get excited for these sessions. Now, if I was training twice a day, I would dread it, right? So I genuinely love it. And I have a system when I'm busy to train just twice a week. And I get solid results on 2 days a week. Actually, I get leaner because my appetite isn't as high. When I lift, I want to eat. So I actually get leaner on 2 days, but I just walk. And again, I think like if you are solving for building an amazing life and being fulfilled, you need to push yourself. So it's like everything we're doing, yes, you're going to get the physique, the result, but like you will, if there was nothing to gain, like if you couldn't gain any more muscle, like you feel better going into the gym. You feel better getting outside and getting 12,000 steps. You feel better when you do a little fast in the morning and now you're eating some food and you're craving it and you push through that. And with fasting, there's a dopamine benefit, right? Where dopamine gets strengthened whenever you do work first and then you get the reward. So when you wake up, oh no, we gotta push that. We gotta hit this fast for the first 5 hours. We gotta get some steps in. We gotta get some work done. And now we get the reward. You're strengthening that work reward pathway. I was actually pretty lazy when I would eat breakfast in the morning. I would be like, I remember when I was kind of starting my business, I was like kind of blogging. I would, eat breakfast and then I'd be like, oh, let's play some video games for a little bit. Let me check my phone. Let's watch this TV show. But like when I fasted and had a coffee, my dopamine was firing, and caffeine actually improves dopamine sensitivity, helps activate dopamine. And I would just, boom, I would lock in. It was amazing. Yeah. And then at night you have the big meal, you trigger that parasympathetic nervous system. And that's the time where you want to like throw on a TV show or a movie. Yeah.
If you could only do 5 exercises the rest of your life, what would they be?
I would definitely do an incline press.
Dumbbell?
Dumbbell. Yeah. I would do some pull-ups.
Okay.
Wide
grip, narrow grip?
I would do a kind of slightly wide on the shoulder width, just the best way to train is do the grip you're strongest at, too wide, you're going to lose a bit of leverage, too narrow, so a little bit wide on the shoulder width.
Okay.
I would do, people hate on this exercise. You do it correctly. It's safe and it actually injury proofs your shoulders and it builds incredible shoulders. It's the Cuban press. The Cuban press, like if you have healthy shoulders, oh my God, this thing blows my shoulders and traps up. When I do it, rest pause style. So I do Cuban press.
Okay, that's three.
I mean, you know, so that's 3. And then I would do like a Bulgarian split squat and I'd do like just a Romanian deadlift. That would be kind of my 5 movements. But that Cuban press, just that you get some nice rotation and it balances out my shoulders and I just get huge shoulders. But again, if you're doing like an upright row with your hands close together, you're going to create some impingement. But if you do it the lighter weight and nice motion, it's very, very good. So
amazing.
Yeah.
Who has the best physique you've ever seen in real life?
I mean, Greg Plitt, I met him in, I had some mutuals. I met him in LA and he had a really awesome physique. But again, I kind of like something that's not too over the top. Kind of like you're chiseled and you're got good muscle, but it's not like overblown or it's not, you know, but Greg Plitt had a really awesome, and he was 6'1", 195. So really awesome physique for sure.
Yeah. Well, I know you've got a couple of others coming up here, but I really appreciate you coming on the show today and just sharing your story. And I think you're an awesome dude and genuinely want to set up a breathwork session with you. I think it would change your life. So
awesome. I think I'm ready for that. Yeah.
Thanks, man.